me and you can hear me. I'm hoping that technically speaking, everything is okay. I just want to make sure that you guys can see and hear me. How are you guys? How are you doing this week? If you are new to this week's live stream, welcome. I was on last week where I talked about 5 tips on how to make yourself more attractive to employers and how to get yourself the job offer. And this week we're going to be talking about interviews and interview mistakes that you might be making that are stopping you from getting the job offer, if that's you. So please, again, let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me. I think you can. The messages are a little bit delayed right now, so I'm just waiting for you guys to tell me that yes, you can hear and see me. Hopefully everything's good. So I'm going to begin. Now, this is the thing, is that when I went onto Instagram and I asked you guys if, well, specifically, if you guys wanted to see more of my live streams, a lot of people said yes. Most people said yes, that you want me to go on live more often. So that's something that I'm doing. And then on top of that, I asked you, what did you want me to talk about? And I got a whole bunch of responses from you guys. Anything from, talk about burnout, talk about how do we look for a job while we're burned out with the job that we're currently in, or stressed and things like that. Or you guys wanted to talk about resumes, or you wanted to talk about interviews. So I thought a good safe topic to talk about that I think everyone's usually always interested in, especially if you are currently looking for a new job, is interviews. Now, here's the thing, is that I'm not, in this live stream, I'm not going to be talking about specific interview questions and specific answers on how to answer, a typical interview question. The reason why I'm not doing that is because I've already done that. I've done that in full detail. I've done that to the nines, okay? And that, where I've done that is in my course, Top Notch Interview. So if you've never heard of my program, Top Notch Interview, I recommend that you check it out if it's something that you want to pursue. Essentially, what it is it's my online course where I teach you step by step all the different questions that you can expect in the interview, from the first round, second round to final round interviews. And then I walk you through what the sample framework for the answer is for each of those types of questions. And then I also give you a sample response, exactly how an example of somebody would answer that question. So you get the full gambit in Top Notch Interview. So if it's something that you're interested in, definitely check that out. I have a free interview mastery workshop in the description box below this video. So after this session, you can check that out, because today what we're going to be talking about is more about the strategy behind interviewing, in terms of what are the mistakes that you're making that you don't even realize you're making when going into interviews. And it could be things that you're not doing beforehand or doing beforehand, and then things that you're doing in the interview. So I have about 5 things that I came up with, but actually, when I was going through this myself, I actually realized I have 6 things to tell you about, 6 mistakes that you are probably making. Okay, so if this is something that interests you, give me a thumbs up in the comments. Okay, if you guys are excited to learn or excited to chat with me. So what's going to happen is I'm going to share with you the 5 or 6 mistakes, interview mistakes that you might be making. I'm going to talk to you about each of them and how you can improve and all that. And then after that, depending on the time before the hour is over, I'm going to be able to answer your Q&A. I'm going to do a bit of Q&A. I'm going to be able to answer your questions. And again, I'm not answering specific interview questions. I think it's just only fair to the thousands of students who have signed up for Top Notch Interview, and for the future students who will be signing up for Top Notch Interview, that all that information is kept in the course. So you have full access to it once you enroll in the course, if you choose to. I'm not pushing you to, but if you choose to, you have access to all of that information in terms of interviews and questions and answers. Today, we're just talking about strategy, okay? Which is equally as important, but really, really important. Okay, I see thumbs up from Basically Just Living. I like that. Awesome. Julie says thumbs up. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So let's talk about mistake number 1. Okay. Someone asked, Tuber324 says, are interviews about me or the interviewer? So they're about you, okay? You're the interviewee. You're the one that's being interviewed. So these are mistakes that you, as the job candidate, are potentially making when you're going on interviews. That's what we're talking about here, okay? So let's talk about mistake number one. Mistake number one, you feel that you have no control over this interview process. You feel that you're at the mercy of the interviewers. So the person that just asked me, is this about the interviewer or about the interviewee? It's a good segue, because a lot of people, a lot of ambitious professionals, a lot of job candidates, when you are going on interviews, I find, if you're not doing well in interviews, you end up getting into this mindset trap, this thinking that I have no control. I'm at the mercy of these hiring managers. I'm at the mercy of these recruiters. I have no control in this process whatsoever. I have to, it feels like I'm a slave to them and I have to say what they want to hear and I have no control over anything. I know I'm sounding, and I tend to do this. If you've already seen me talk in the past, I tend to exaggerate what people think. But you know what? I mean, sometimes it's necessary for me to exaggerate it that way so that you can actually hear yourself in terms of the way you might be thinking. You might be thinking that, yeah, I don't have any control. I'm at the mercy of them. They're the ones picking and choosing. Like, it's completely unfair, blah, 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 blah. You can say all the things that you want. And to reverse that, I have a different opinion. I actually think, and I mentioned this last week in my other live stream, I actually think that you, as the job candidate, you have so much control. You have a lot more control than you think. Why? How? How do you have control? If you think about an interview, 90% of the time, in the half hour, 1 hour, however long you're in that interview, who's doing the talking? Is it the interviewer, the person who's just asking the questions, or is it you, the person who's answering questions? Who's doing more of the talking? I think we can all agree that you're the one that is doing most of the talking, right? You're the one that's doing most of the talking. So if you're doing most of the talking, that means the other person, that interviewer, has to sit there to listen to you. And if they're sitting there listening to you, that means they're taking whatever you decide and you choose to tell them verbally, and whatever you decide to share with them, they're taking that information and then they're making a call as to whether you are a fit for the opportunity, whether you're the right one to move forward into the process, whether you're the one that they want to hire. They're making that decision, yes, but they're basing it off of everything that you tell them. They're basing it off of what you say. They're basing it off of the stories you're sharing. They're basing it off of how convincing you are, how persuasive you are, how confident you are. You see that? So that's the mistake, is that you think that you don't have control when in reality, when actually you're the one that has control. You, depending on what you tell them and what you say and how you say it, it really is about how you say it, okay? Because that's what I teach in my course, Top Notch Interview. I teach you, how do you structure your answers? What are the sentences? What do you say? What are the things that you need to incorporate? Because the way that you structure, the things that you say and the way that you structure, that's what's going to convince them and persuade them that you are the right fit for them. So it's all about the things that are coming out of your mouth, the words that are coming out of your mouth, and the energy that's coming across. So you're the one that has control. So that's the number one mistake that I want you to stop making, is stop thinking that you don't have control, because you do. You are the one that has the ability to showcase to them that you are the right fit, that you are the top candidate for the position. You're the one that has the ability to let them feel confident about you. If you don't feel confident about yourself, they will not feel confident about you. That's just the reality. So if you're walking in with this mindset that you have no control, that you are feeling not confident, that you're feeling not good, blah, 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 that there's so much competition, that they're probably not going to hire you anyway. If you're coming in with that mindset, with that energy, unfortunately, what's happening is they are picking up on that. You know, as human beings, we're so intuitive. This is something that, I've always known for myself, because I'm naturally a very sensitive person. I find myself someone who can pick up on people's feelings and thoughts pretty easily. And I guess that's why I'm good at what I do. I'm good at communicating with others and being able to teach others what they need to know to impress or persuade someone else of whatever it is that they need to, because I understand what people are thinking, at a given time. If you're present, okay, when you're walking into an interview, if you are present and you can read whatever the other person is thinking or feeling, you're gonna be able to pick up on that, and then you're gonna be able to respond to that. And the same thing happens for you. The interviewer is sitting in the room. Well, in this case, they're sitting virtually over the computer, looking at you through their laptop, and they're trying to pick up as much as they can. They're not just listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth. They're listening to everything. They're actively listening. This is something that I teach when I do workshops and conferences for different organizations. I talk about active listening. Active listening is more than just listening to the words that come out of someone's mouth. Active listening is about listening to what it is they're feeling, listening to the energy behind their words, listening to what they mean behind their words. What is it that they mean? Not just what they're saying. What are they actually intending to deliver to me? So, I'm not saying all interviewers do this, because the truth is, and you're probably thinking, well, a lot of interviewers don't seem like they are actively listening. They're probably just, looking at their phone or whatever. And if that's the case, yeah, then they're not a good interviewer. They're not a good hiring manager, potentially. Maybe they're not the right fit for you. But that's for you to decide, okay? At the end of the day, you have control over this process. I'm going through this so much because I think it sets the tone for how you need to shift yourself, how you need to change yourself. This is not just for interviews. This is for life, okay? This is stuff that you can recognize for yourself when you're just out in daily life, in terms of how are you communicating with others in your circle? How are you coming across to others? Do you feel that you are constantly being judged? Do you feel like others are looking down on you? Do you feel that you are, feeling constrained, like you just can't be yourself? If that's the case, you have to take a deeper look at, well, why are you feeling that way? Is it because they're actually making you feel that way? If that's the case, then you need to get away from that environment. Or is it because you're making yourself feel that way on your own? You're doing it to yourself. Okay, so we're getting deep here. If you don't want me to get too deep, then maybe you're going to have to leave, because I tend to take it down the rabbit hole. Okay, where is this all coming from? So just know you have control. Okay, when it comes to the interviews, what you say and how you say it is going to help the interviewer make that decision to feel good about you. You can help the interviewer feel good about you. It all comes down to what you say and how you say it. And if you want to learn those specific tactics, go ahead and take Top Notch Interview, just putting that out there, or take my free interview workshop, which is in the link down below. Okay, so that is tip number one. So who's with me so far? I see that you guys are commenting, and this is a live. Yes, this is live. If you guys are wondering, we are live. Okay. All right. Okay, so if you guys have questions, leave the questions to the end, okay? Because I'm not going to be able to scroll through. You guys are already messaging like crazy. So leave your questions to the end when I say, okay, time for questions. Okay, so save your questions, put them aside, and then I'll be able to answer them at the end, okay? So are you guys with me on tip number one? You guys feeling good about this? Do you feel you have more control? Yeah, okay. David says, keep it coming. This is great stuff. Awesome. All right, and I see a thumbs up. Okay. I think my comments are lagging a little bit, so I'm just waiting a little at times. But anyways, I'm going to keep going. All right. How to control your nerves, says Hai Hung Do. That's a good question. And you know what? I am going to answer it, even though I said questions at the end. The reason why is because I think it closely relates to this first tip, which is this control thing. You are nervous. Why are you nervous? Do you know why you're nervous? You are nervous because, actually, it goes into a tip. So let me talk about this other tip. Or, sorry, not tip, mistake that you're making. Mistake number two. Interview mistake number two that you're making. You are too worried about what they think of you, and you're judging yourself in the interview that you aren't able to talk confidently. You're not able to talk naturally. You're not able to show off your personality because your mind in the interview, the mistake that you're making is that you are consumed much about what is he or she thinking about me right now. Oh no, they're thinking this about me. Oh no, did I just say that? Oh no. Oh, those thoughts are consuming you in the interview. Tell me if this is you. Say yes if you agree that when you're in the interview, you catch yourself judging yourself in the interview as it's happening. You're thinking about, oh gosh, what are they thinking of me right now? Blah, blah, blah. Like you have these thoughts, even though they're not on full front of mind, they're somewhere in the back of your head that's happening. And especially before the interview, you're like, oh God, what are they going to ask me? Oh no, they're going to think that I'm this or that. These thoughts are happening. And that is actually, those thoughts are what creates the nervousness. Okay. That's where the nervousness comes from, is that feeling that you're judging, like this self-judging feeling. It's like they're looking down on me, or they're going to think this of me and that. And so basically, these are all thoughts, things that you have no control over. You have no idea how they're going to think of you, but you're making it up. And that's what makes you nervous, because it's really our thoughts that makes us nervous. It's not the interview itself. It's not talking to someone necessarily that makes us nervous. It's what comes with it. It's what we bring upon ourselves. And if you're bringing upon these feelings of inadequacy, these feelings of insecurity, these feelings that you're not confident, all these types of things, if you're bringing that onto yourself, that's what creates that nervous energy. So that's the mistake that you're making, is that you're too worried about them and you're not worried enough about, how do I make sure that this story is as convincing as possible? How do I make sure that I sound as confident as possible? How do I make sure that I articulate it in a way that it really directly lands on them? It lands just right on the right spot where they can hear and see and understand that I'm the right fit for this job. You see the focus that you can shift to? If you decided to shift away from, oh, what are they thinking of me? Do they think I'm good enough? Oh, I don't know. Versus, how can I make this sound better? How can I make it sound convincing? How can I really engage with them? How, all these other thoughts that are more productive. Okay. It sounds so basic when I say it like that, but I think we need to analyze ourselves and look at ourselves in a more objective way at times, where we recognize, wow, I'm nervous because I'm telling myself these things and it's making me nervous. If I just focus on something else, something more productive, and because I have control over that, I'm going to feel less nervous. So you'll feel less nervous if you know what you're going to say. You'll feel less nervous if you come prepared. You'll feel less nervous if you know how the other side, if you're able to gauge the energy of that other person and really connect with them. If you're putting out that intention to connect, to engage with that individual, you'll feel less nervous, because the focus is no longer about what they potentially think of you. The focus is from the inside out instead of the outside in. Oh no, what's coming at me? What are they thinking? Blah, 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 coming at me. The focus is in what's coming from within me outwards. That's what you have control over in an interview and in any conversation in life with any person. You have the ability to engage, to convince, to persuade, to acknowledge the other side, to provide a certain energy that they can feel off of you. You have that control. But if you're not focused on directing your energy in the appropriate way and saying the right things and saying it in the methodical, strategic way that I teach, if you're not going to do that, you're going to be wrapped up with nervous energy. Okay. And the other reason why you're also nervous is lack of preparation. Okay. So now I'm just diving into the next tip, but tip number, interview mistake. I keep calling them tips. They're mistakes. Interview mistake number 3, interview error that you're making number 3 is that you are winging it. You're winging your interviews. Okay. So hopefully you guys are getting this so far. Before I jump right in, I just wanted to jump into the comments to see how you guys are doing. Okay. Good. You guys seem like you are doing well and you can hear me and all that. Okay, good. All right. So tip number 3, The reason why you might not be doing well in interviews, sorry, interview mistake number 3. I keep doing that. Interview mistake number 3 is that you're winging it, which means, what does winging it mean? It means that you're not prepared. You go to these interviews and you just expect that, okay, it's just going to be a conversation. They're going to ask me a few questions and I'll answer their questions. Here's the thing. Yes, interviews are conversations. At the end of the day, you're having, another person in front of you talking to you, asking you questions, you're answering their questions. That's a conversation, right? However, this is a very different type of conversation than your casual coffee chat with your friend that you haven't seen in 5 years. This is a conversation that will lead to a decision that could change the course of your career, okay? It is a little bit bigger than that casual coffee chat conversation, although you still have to maintain that tone, that casual tone when you're in it, when you're in that conversation. You still want to maintain that engaging casual tone. However, you need to be prepared. So what does prepared mean? It means that you need to know all the things about you that make you relevant to this position. You need to do some work on yourself in terms of understanding how you can showcase to them you're the right fit for them. And then on top of that, you have to also understand what they could potentially ask of you, what they could potentially ask you in the interviews, so that you have your stories and your responses lined up, so that when the question is thrown at you, you're able to just pull it down and hand it over to them on a silver platter. It's not you sitting there trying to make things up on the spot, trying to pull an answer together on the spot, rambling. Who rambles? We talked about this last week. If you catch yourself rambling in the interview, then that tells me, when I was a recruiter and I would find people rambling, I knew that they didn't know where they were going with the answer. They just kept going because they didn't know where to stop, when to stop. They didn't know what to include in their answers. So they're trying to tell me everything, all about everything, about the question that I asked and more. And that's not how to answer interview questions, okay? So the mistake is that you're not prepared, that you don't understand what's going to be asked of you. You don't know what's going to be asked of you. And then you also don't know how to prepare for anything that could be asked of you. So that's a mistake. So what's the answer? The answer is to prepare, to do your research, to put in that time and effort, okay? And then the next question you're gonna ask me, well, how? How do I do that? Where do I do that? There's different ways, okay? I offer different resources from me specifically, but the internet has tons of answers. And if you want to dig through millions of different responses to different questions and, overload yourself, go ahead and do that. But I do recommend that you do whatever you need to do to get a clear understanding of what you need to do to prepare your stories, and also to understand what types of questions are going to be asked. And like I mentioned earlier, if that is something that interests you, then you can check out my interview mastery workshop, which is free, and that's below, or enroll in Top Notch Interview. I teach that there, okay? But that's what I talk about when it comes to preparing. You need to prepare. So many people don't, and that's where you lose, okay? Someone who's prepared versus someone who's unprepared, it's very obvious in an interview. It is so obvious. It's so obvious, because if you're unprepared, most of the time you don't know what to say. When you don't know what to say, you make things up, or you try to put things together, or you freeze. You don't say anything at all. Okay, it is so obvious. And I think the only way for you to see how unprepared a person can be is if you are on the other side and you were the interviewer, you were interviewing someone, you'd be able to spot it out like that. But because you're the interviewee, you don't recognize maybe how you're being seen. And you just need to know, I'm just telling you right now, it's very obvious. So if you don't do the work of preparing in advance, even though you haven't got called for interviews yet, maybe you've only put out some job applications recently and you haven't gotten called. That's okay. Still, start working on your preparation, because the interview could come up tomorrow. You might get called for an interview tomorrow and they might be ripping through some questions that you had no idea how to answer because you didn't do the preparation work ahead of time. Start preparing now. If you're looking for a job, prepare that now. Know what you have, what are your assets, what are your experiences, what are your qualifications, what are the stories that you have that are relevant to this position. Have those ready, have those prepared, know yourself, okay? Do an inventory on yourself when it comes to preparation. And like I said, I teach all of that in Top Notch Interview if that's something that you want to look into. I'm not going to explain all of that here because we just don't have time. We're already halfway through and I want to be able to get to your questions, okay? So that is interview mistake number 3, not being prepared and just winging it. Interview mistake number 4. You over-research the company. So you are trying to prepare. You over-research the company and not yourself. Okay, so this really ties in with the preparation thing. A lot of people, what they end up doing right before an interview, tell me if you do this, if you end up researching the company like crazy, like you read through all their, let's say their investor relations, press releases, their financial statements, you go through that, and then you end up going all over their website, you end up going on their social media, on their LinkedIn, you look at everything that you possibly can before going in for the interview. That is wonderful if you do that, that's great. But if that's the only thing you're doing, that is not enough, and you are going to get screwed because most of the interview isn't asking about the company. Of course, that will be a question that could likely come up, okay? What do you know about us? I'm throwing that out there. That's something that you've probably been asked before and that you will likely get asked again in your next interview. So you better know what the company is about. That's one. But the second thing is you can't just stop there. You have to know about yourself. And that's everything that I just talked about previous, okay, in the third tip. So make sure that you know yourself, you know what you have to offer, what are your abilities, your strengths, your talents, what are the things that you bring forward that are going to help them, that are going to make sure that this role is getting fulfilled in a way that it's above and beyond what they expect. How can you showcase that to them in the responses that you give, in the answers that you give? That's the underlying energy that you want to deliver. Okay, so that is my tip. So how are you guys doing? I am seeing, okay, you guys are messaging all kinds of things. What if I was bullied as a child? Okay, I don't know why that's in there. Okay, so Sandy says, love this. I still don't understand why are you guys talking about bullying? Okay, I'm gonna have to look at that. How do I avoid getting bullied as a child and then get a job? Okay, anyways, you guys are doing well. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next tip. Okay. Julian says thumbs up. All right, awesome. Tammy says keep a notebook with questions and answers. That's actually a really good tip in terms of when you're going for interviews. Right after the interview, because obviously when you're on a virtual Zoom interview, for example, they're not writing down the questions that they're asking you as they're asking them to you. You should wait till the interview's over and then try to recall every single question that was asked of you one by one and just write them down, because that's good preparation for the next interview. Okay, if you don't know questions that are going to be asked of you, going on interviews is definitely a great way to figure that out, is to go on as many interviews as you can if you have a good enough resume that get you those interviews. That's a whole other story in itself. But then once you get those interviews, write down the interview questions that you get and prepare for those for the next interview. Okay. All right, I think we're on tip number 5 now. So tip number 5 is interview mistake number 5 is you don't understand why they're asking you certain questions, and therefore you don't have a proper strategy to answering them. Okay, that's the mistake, is that you don't understand why they ask you certain questions, and then you don't have a proper strategy on how to answer them. Now, here is the thing. When it comes to interview questions, if I was to share something with you so that you really understand this whole world of interviewing, one thing I want to share with you is at the end of the day, every question that they ask you, the underlying reason why they're asking you, what they really want to know, the underlying, if you dig deep, okay, you take one question, any interview question, and then you take it down to the most basic level, to its root, to its foundation. What they're really asking you is, why are you a fit for us? Okay, that's what every interview question is asking you, even though they're structured a different way. but they're all really wanting to know is why you're a fit for us. And then your answer, your way you structure your answer, it's going to be different depending on the question, but your underlying, if you go to the basic root of what you're telling them, is why you're a fit for them. Sorry, guys, I think the camera just did this thing again. But the underlying root is you're telling them why you're a fit for them. Okay? They're asking, why are you a fit for us? And you're telling them why you're a fit for them. That's the very basic, down to the most foundational level of all interview questions that you need to understand. Okay? So if you don't understand this, the way you answer questions are not going to convince them, because you're not letting them know why you're a fit for them, because you're not following through with that underlying understanding. Okay, so it doesn't mean, though, that every answer to every question is going to be the exact same, saying the same thing over and over again. That's not really how it is, because there is a structure and strategy for every type of interview question that you have to use in order to answer it so that it's convincing. You need to have diversity in your answers. You can't just say the same thing over and over again. And that I teach in Top Notch Interview. I keep bringing it up, but that's just the reality. That's where I teach that stuff if you want to learn about it. So understanding that you are trying to display to them, that you're trying to convince them, persuade them that you're the right fit for them, that's what's most important. Okay, if you understand that, then once you start working on the individual questions and understanding the answer frameworks, and then being able to come up with your own answers, your own sample responses to different questions, that'll be easy, because now you understand why you're answering this question this way, and you're understanding why that question is being asked of you. Okay, because a lot of people will come to me and say, why do they ask those crazy questions like, how many elephants can you fit in a refrigerator? Or how many, dogs can you put on a bus or something? And if you really think about it, the most basic level is they want to know, based on how you answer it, whether you're a fit for them. Okay, what would someone who's a fit for them, how would they answer this question? What would be the process for how they would break down their response? What is the thinking process that they would need to go through? What is verbally, what are the things that they would need to say? What are the components in an answer that would make sense for that question for someone who is meant to be hired in that company for that role? Okay, there's a lot that goes behind every question that you need to understand, because this is the truth, is that you might feel, tell me if you feel this, okay? You guys tell me in the comments if you ever feel like you're being asked a trick question in an interview. Do you ever feel like you're being asked trick questions? Do you feel like the interviewer is trying to trick you, trying to trip you up, ask you questions that almost sound like there's no real positive, good answer to, that no matter what you say, it just sounds like you're just gonna mess it up? Like, do you ever feel that way? Tell me if that's you. Tell me how you guys are, if you ever feel like you're being tricked in the interview, okay? Let's see. Okay, Sarah says, yes, I did. Okay. Kazambila says yes. Jorge says yes. Jay Moore says yes. Okay, awesome. So you guys are on the same page. So you guys are feeling like you're being asked like trick questions, right? The reason why you'll feel like you're being asked a trick question is because you don't understand why they're asking that question. But once you understand, and now you understand that it's because they're wanting to know how you're fit, and then using that understanding, you have to have this right structure and strategy to answering the question, you'll be able to answer it properly. And it's, at times, it does feel like interviewers just want to ask you a trick question, like even that question of, what is your weakness? Tell me what your weakness is. Like, you might think that's like a trick question. Like, if I tell them this weakness, then they're going to think that that's a weakness, and then they won't hire me because that's a weakness. Well, you know what? The way you answer that question is actually going to help to help them to decide whether they want to hire you or not. It's the way that you answer it. It's not necessarily what you say. It's the way that you say it. The way that you answer the question is actually part of their decision process. It's part of how they decide that you are the right fit for the job. It's the way you're communicating. Okay? So that is tip number 5, or sorry, interview mistake number 5. And then interview mistake number 6, the bonus one, is instead of seeing the interview as an opportunity to persuade and convince them, instead of seeing it as an opportunity to sell yourself, you see it as a Q&A. And I actually think I already touched upon this now that I'm reflecting back. I think I already touched upon this throughout this last 35 minutes that we've been on. But you feel that this is just a Q&A. You ask me a question, I give you an answer. You ask me a question, I give you an answer. But now hopefully you've realized, based on everything I've told you up until this point, the interview is so much more intricate than that. Because what you say, how you say it, the way you deliver your energy, the way you come across, all of that determines whether you are the right fit for that company. So it's not just a Q&A. That's totally, that's totally basic if you're thinking that. If you're thinking it's just a question and answer, it's not. It is an opportunity for you to persuade them. It's an opportunity for you to convince them. It's an opportunity for you to sell yourself. Okay? And it's all in how you do it and what you say. How you say what you say and what you say. Okay? So you need to start seeing interviews as that, as this opportunity that's being handed to you to engage with someone, to connect with someone, and then to shift their thinking about you, to mold how they should feel about you. Because like I said, what did I say at the very beginning? I said, you're the one that has control in the interview, because what you say and how you say it will control the outcome of what they feel about you and what they think about you. Because you, through the power of your words and through the power of the way you deliver your energy and the way you present yourself, they are able to feel and sense a certain way about you. And if you are making them think about you in a certain direction, in the right way, to making them see that you're the fit for the job, they're going to feel that you're the fit for the job. The more you feel about that about yourself, the more they're going to feel that about you. So the one thing you have to address is, how do I feel right now? If you're looking for a job, you have to ask yourself, how do I feel about myself? Do I even feel like I'm a good candidate for these jobs that I'm applying for? Do I even feel worthy? Do I feel valuable? Do I feel like I have something to offer? What is it? Because you could say that I'm just an admin assistant, or you can say that you support certain processes within the blah, blah, blah team, whatever team. And what's the purpose of, supporting that process? You can talk about that too. So there's different ways to approach how to sell yourself. You just need to understand that it's beyond you thinking that you're just there to answer some questions. It's not that. You're there to convince and persuade. Okay, so those are my 6 top interview mistakes that I have seen people make, and you're probably surprised at them, because you're probably thinking some of them, they make sense. Some of them you're like, I didn't even think that was maybe a mistake that I was making. But hopefully you recognize that now, because at the end of the day, most of what is going wrong is what's happening within you. It's the thoughts that you're telling yourself and the way that you're thinking that's resulting in you probably not getting called back for interviews. Okay. There's a whole lot more. It could be the way that you talk. Like, it could be like the lack of ability to connect with them. I mean, there's so much, but it starts with these. Okay. Understand yourself, know how you're coming across, know how you're interacting with others, know what you're saying, know how they are accepting your answers. Like, how are they receiving it? How receptive are these interviewers? When you go on interviews, the next interview that you go on, what I want you to pay attention to is, how are they responding? Are they like nodding their heads, looking interested, like feeling really engaged because of how I'm talking and really what I'm sharing with them? And they feel like I'm the right fit for them because I'm telling them that I'm the right fit for them? Or does it seem like they're like, okay, got it. Thank you. You're the only one that can see that, because you're the one being interviewed. So you have to pay attention to that the next time you go for an interview. That will give you a gauge as to what you need to do to improve. Okay. So those are my interview mistakes. Hopefully that was helpful to you. So I am going to now address some questions. If you guys have questions about interview strategy, or specifically about the interview mistakes that I just talked about, please put them in the chat box and I will be happy to take a look. So let's take a look at this. So my collection, Stella, says, how many hours is generally recommended for prepping for an interview? You know what? It's hard to say, because this is what I know to be true. When it comes to preparing for interviews, if you've not been preparing for interviews in like years and years and years, then once you start preparing for interviews, that will take a while. I can't even say how much. It's going to take for sure at least hours. Okay, at least. And not only that, the thing with interviews, I forgot to include this. This is my 7th interview mistake. You don't practice. That's your mistake that you're also doing. So you're not practicing your interview responses, your interview stories, and your answers. You're not practicing. You're not taking the time to practice. Practice in itself takes hours. But even before you can practice something, you need to have it already prepared so that you can practice it. If you have nothing to practice, there's nothing to practice. Then you can't practice. So you have to prepare what your interview stories are, what the potential questions could be, what you know about yourself, what you're going to say, all those things. You need to prepare those. That's going to take hours and hours and hours, however long that's going to take you. Okay, it depends on you and how quickly you work. And then on top of that, you need to consistently practice your answers. Especially in, the day or two before the interviews, you should be practicing throughout that time frame. You shouldn't be waiting till the hour before the interview to practice. Ideally, you want to be practicing the days before so that you feel as comfortable as possible with what you're going to say, so that when you're in the interview, you're not feeling nervous because you feel more confident, okay? So unfortunately, I can't give you an exact number of days or number of hours, but just know there's 2 layers to preparation. There's the actual preparation of the responses of what you're going to say and the questions and all that. And then there's the practicing of those answers and responses and stories. Okay, so hopefully that helps you there. And hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Someone says, Leaf Nation says, how do you answer questions you weren't prepared for? Okay, so sorry if you heard my dog just barked. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but how do you answer questions you weren't prepared for? So this is actually something that I teach in my top-notch interview course. I have 5 or 6 different bonuses in my top-notch interview course. And one of the bonuses is exactly titled, How to Answer Questions That You Know Nothing About. So usually questions like software that you hadn't heard about, or like questions about a concept that you haven't heard about necessarily. Now, I walk you through what you need to already be doing beforehand. One thing I need to tell you is that, for things like software, certain concepts that you're being asked, unfortunately, we can't always prepare for everything that's going to be thrown at us. However, something like that you should logically be able to expect that they're going to ask you about potentially software if your job is going to revolve around having to work around software, working with software. So you should be doing that research, and you should know all the different types of software that could be expected for your type of job. So that, unfortunately, is something that you can't make up on the spot. You have to do that work ahead of time. That's part of preparing, but that's what I talk about in the course. And then what I teach you is the exact strategy, step by step. I think it's like 5 or 6 steps on how to structure your answer when it's a question that you haven't prepared in advance, when you don't know what the exact, when you just didn't have that expectation that question would come up. How do you structure your answer so that it sounds logical and it sounds like it makes sense? There's several steps to that. As long as you know the steps, so this is the key, the thing that you're going to learn when you're in top-notch interview is that as long as you understand the strategy, you remember the strategy, you remember the steps, then you'll, even on the spot, if you don't have a full answer already, prepared, ready to go, you're able to still construct an answer that makes complete sense, that is convincing and persuasive, knowing the steps, knowing the structure of a good answer. What makes a good interview answer? You need to know that. Once you know that, even if a question is thrown at you that you hadn't prepared for ever, you're going to be able to answer it because you're going to know, well, in a good answer, these are the components of what makes a good answer. So as long as I can gather that right now as I'm speaking and I'm saying that, okay, let me talk about this first, then I'll talk about this, then I'll talk about this. So you're lining it up. Your answer will still sound cohesive. It will sound persuasive, and it will be convincing. Okay. And of course, this all has to be honest and real and based on real facts and things about you, knowledge that you have. You're not making things up out of thin air. You're just using the knowledge that you have, but you're structuring it. That's what communication is all about. What makes someone a good communicator is that they know how to structure what they're going to say. You know, even if they have to do it on the fly. If they have to tell you a story, they know how to set up the story. They know how to tell you, you know, to get you engaged. What did they say at the beginning? Then how did they get you, you know, really pulled into the meat of the story? Then how do they get you to the end? That's what makes a good communicator. And really, that's what interviewing is all about, is you learning how to communicate. Okay. And that's really what I teach in Top Notch Interview, is how do you communicate with every single question that can be asked of you? What is the strategy? What is the way that you would communicate your answer that way? And I give you the sample response and I give you the full framework for that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. I think I'll answer just a couple more questions and then we will say it's a wrap. Okay, so someone said, Sandy said, I just shared your video on LinkedIn and some friends. Incredible insight. Can't wait to report back on our success and progress from your advice. Awesome, Sandy. Well, I can't wait to hear about that. Someone, Alex R22 says, should I prepare for the interview after the interview? What does that mean? So if you've gotten an interview and you're waiting for the next round interview, then yes, you should prepare for that interview. Is that what you mean? Alex, you can clarify if you'd like, but the answer is yes. If you're asking, should I prepare? The answer is always yes, prepare. Prepare is always going to give you that confidence more than not preparing. So answer is always yes, prepare. All right. And Talisha Perry says, excellent 6 tips. Awesome. I'm glad that was helpful. Call of Duty, yeah, says, should I prepare for the interview before or after? Okay, so anyways, so Alex says, no, I want to prepare for the interview that I already lost the job to. Okay, so I'm still confused about that. If you want to prepare. Okay, so Adanma says, what is the minimum amount a response should be? So there is no real answer to that in terms of like what the minimum number of sentences should be. I can tell you that it should not be 1 sentence. Okay, when you enroll in Top Notch Interview, you'll understand that there is a sequence of things that you need to include in your answers, and so it will never just be 1 sentence long. You'll have to include multiple layers to your answer, and so it's always going to be just enough that when someone hears it, they're going to feel like it's a complete answer. They're not going to feel like that you cut it halfway. Okay. All right. So I'll answer one more question. And that is, how do you sound natural answering interview questions? Not too rehearsed, that is. And that's asked by Mazapan. Okay. So good question. How do you sound natural? I think I've already hit this topic over the head multiple times. You're going to sound natural by practicing. But when you practice, what happens? This is what happens, okay? You're going to practice, and you're going to sound perfect when you're practicing. Then you go into the interview and it's a whole different environment. It's a whole different game because you actually have that person sitting in front of you. They're actually looking at you through the screen or whatever, and it's the real thing. So all of a sudden, all that practice kind of, okay, maybe not 100% of it, but a good chunk of it kind of goes out the window at that time because you're feeling all the feelings of being in the moment. So what's going to happen is you need to incorporate yourself into this. Now you need to bring it all together when you're in the interview, where you remember the structure of the answers that you rehearsed, but you're going to deliver it in a way that's asking you the question. Okay, you're being as present as possible. asking you the question and you remember the full answer, but you're not going to sound like a robot, because what you're going to do is you're going to break it down and you're going to deliver it to them as if you're just talking to them and you're just having a normal conversation. That's where I talk about having a normal conversation, sounding casual comes in. That's what you need to be doing. Okay, you need to, at this point, throw away the rehearsed side of you, the robotic side of you, and now you already have that knowledge embedded in your head. Now you're just going to deliver it, and you're going to do it in a very present way. You're going to talk to them. You're going to walk them through. You're going to pull them into your story. You're going to explain things. You're going to engage with them that way. Okay? I know that sounds like, it's not like oh, dude, just this one thing, and then all of a sudden you're going to sound supernatural. No, it's a bunch of things that make you sound supernatural. But the biggest thing is being present with the person, talking to the person, feeling as if you're talking to grandma sometimes. You know, when let's say grandma has a hard time hearing, and you have to explain, grandma has asked you, what do you do, or what have you been doing over the last year, or whatever, and you can't explain in complex terms to grandma, what you've been up to. Instead, you're going to break it down very simply to grandma, what you've been up to. You're going to explain it to her in a tone that she understands, and you're going to walk her through it, and she'll be like, oh, I get it. Okay, that's cool. That's good that you do that, or whatever. So you're doing the same thing. You're not talking, as if you're talking to a deaf grandmother necessarily when you're talking to the hiring manager, but you are answering it in a way that feels natural to you, because you're talking to them in a way where you're present. You're being present. You have all the knowledge at this point. If you've prepared, you already know your stuff, you know what you're all about. Now it's time to just let us off to a good ending. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. It looks like my internet connection is being unstable for some reason, so might as well leave. Okay, someone says grandma tip is great. Awesome. So if you guys enjoyed this live, let me know. Let me know if you'd like me to do more lives in the future. I'm thinking of doing a few more, seeing how it goes, if you guys are enjoying it. But let me know in the comments if this is something that you're interested in. Be sure to, if you've already subscribed to my channel, that's great, but also click the notification button, because I could go live at any time. Usually I try to let people know in advance, but click the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you're notified, and then you can see me. Okay, guys? So really enjoyed chatting with you. I am hoping that this was helpful to you, and that we can do this again maybe next week or whenever. Okay. All right. You guys have a great evening. So happy to be chatting with you. We'll be talking about other things. I'm actually thinking, I'm just like talking off the cuff now, but I'm actually thinking of doing other topics that are not just job related, but maybe talking about things that maybe people are struggling with from an internal perspective. You know how we talked a lot today about the fact that you're the one that has control. You're the one that, based on how you feel about yourself and what you say to others, you're the one that has control over that whole process. I want to take that a little bit deeper and actually get into, why is it that we feel insecure? Why is it that we're feeling lack of confidence within ourselves? What is it that's causing us to feel lost in our lives, in our careers? I mean, what is the purpose of why we're here and what we're meant to do and things like that? I love talking about that stuff, and that's something that I really want to dive into. And if that's something that you're interested in, definitely let me know. Follow me on Instagram, because that's where I ask you guys for a lot of suggestions on these types of things. Follow me on Instagram at Linda Rayner. And that's it, okay? If you guys are interested in learning more about interviews and you are struggling, definitely check out my interview mastery workshop. The link is in the description box down below, and then enroll in Top Notch Interview. I will be there on the other side of Top Notch Interview to be helping you all throughout the way with your next interviews, okay? So I am so looking forward to doing this again. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a good evening, have a good night, have a good day, wherever you are, and we will talk soon. Bye, guys.